What's up, guys? I'm Josh Mosiman. Welcome to This Week in MXA, episode number 207, presented by O'Neill Racing. Thank you guys for tuning in. I spent all day at Angel Stadium for the 2025 preseason press conferences where we heard from lots of top tier riders and from FELD Entertainment's Director of Operations, Mike Muye, about the 2025 season. I asked him some hard-hitting questions like integrating electric bikes into Supercross. That's a hot topic right now, as Arena Cross is doing it currently. They have their own electric bike class, but they also have a separate race where the top 3 electric bikes race against the top 3 combustion engine bikes, and they go head to head. I also did that at the World Vet Championships at Glen Helen a couple weeks ago. Trevor Stewart and I battled it out. Trevor was going super fast on the Stark Varg. I followed him the first moto and ended up passing him on the last lap, and it was so weird on the last lap because I couldn't hear him behind me, so I didn't know if he was inside or outside. And that was very different for me. And then second moto, third moto, I was all over him, trying to get around him, but I could never make the pass. And it was just such a weird concept, racing a guy, getting roosted by a guy, but not being able to hear the bike. So very interesting. So we talked to Mike Muye about electric bikes and Supercross. Also talked to Mike Muye about the 9 whoop situation currently in 2024 and 2025. 9 whoops is the standard. They're not going to make them any longer than that. So he talked about that, their reasoning for it. And I also asked him about tough blocks, what we can do to make tough blocks a little bit safer so they're not rolling onto the track and taking riders out. They're something that makes Supercross look a lot cooler, but it also make it a little more dangerous at the same time. And then also I have a few quotes from Hunter Lawrence and also Cooper Webb. But if you want more, check out our video interview with Jett Lawrence. That's on our YouTube channel and on our website. And stay tuned for more on our website coming soon, as well as some podcasts where we have full in-depth interviews with all the guys on there now. Another thing with electric bikes being so popular recently, is that obviously it's a big discussion you guys are probably having, but what is FELD's current stance on electric bikes and incorporating them or not incorporating them? Obviously the KTM juniors are already electric now, but where are we at on that so far?
Yeah, so we actually have a couple of different working committees that include the OEMs, the AMA, and we're having discussions. Right now there is no intention to put them in racing with the combustion bikes, but we are working to find alternatives for them to race in. FELD is a huge supporter of electric bikes. It's great. Long term for the sport, it's going to be beneficial. If and when the opportunity comes to put a Supercross track in the middle of an urban area, that's pretty good for our sport. It opens it up to a whole new category. So we are supportive of it. It's going to come in time, but it's going to be a definite crawl, walk, run type of a timeline.
I've gotten a race personally with a combustion engine against an electric bike recently and felt the challenges of it. Like, what challenges do you guys see so with combining a quiet bike versus a loud bike, electric versus combustion engine? What challenges?
Yeah, I mean, I think the first one, this might have been what you're alluding to, is the sound difference, right? You don't know if somebody's coming up on you. That can be challenging from a rider perspective. I think we have to learn a lot more about the technology before you can really fairly monitor or from a tech package, So there's a lot of learning that has to be done on that front, and then there has to be an agreement as to what is the right size. We have to learn, where the horsepower is. It horsepower? Is it watts? Is it There's a million different things that we can look at that, and how does that equate to a 450 or a 250 currently?
Do you see any other challenges with like a quiet race going on inside of a stadium? How do you feel about that? I mean, I know you could pump up music while they're racing, but it's definitely a different atmosphere, and you guys put on a show, and it's a great show right now. How would that go if it was quiet?
Yeah, I mean, I think you always have to adapt to the change. It would definitely be unique. We have we have DJs, we have hosts. Unfortunately, sometimes you can't hear them, but it will be different, right? I think we all realize that. Some of the reason that you come to Super Motocross is the sounds, the sounds, the smells, all of those things. I think we're quite a ways off from having real models and plans around that, but there's a lot of different things we could do. You could mic up the bikes, so now it's a different sound, but you still have that sound. It's coming through the speaker so that you still have it with an underbed of music. There's a lot of different things that we could do, but we'll have to kind of see where we get.
Yeah, I think it's not easy, right? Like I said it last year, if it wasn't for dang Jett, I would have, beat all the other guys that have beaten me before, right? So I think just constantly evolving, that's always been my attitude, is like, hey, if we're not getting better, then what are we doing? So I think that's the big thing, right? I've learned and taken away, and I think making the step to Yamaha was a really good step for me in my career. I felt like it was able to really re-spark my love for the sport and just like wanting to get better, and I felt like the bike gave me a platform to be much more competitive. So it's not easy. Those guys, like you said, are young and they're fit and they're in their prime, and I got to rely on experience sometimes, which isn't a bad thing. I think, like I've always said, and I'll say till I'm done, like, I am hard to beat over 17 rounds, right? And there'll be nights where I'm sure Jett or Chase will take off and win the main event easily, but like I said, I think over a championship, I can stay in it.
A little more on the the past weekend. Obviously, it was a hard hit, and it was tough to see you go off. I mean,
yeah,
you don't see guys go off like that and be okay afterwards.
Yeah.
So where are you at? With a stinger, I've had a million times with a stinger in your shoulder, you think it's done.
Yeah.
And you can't really lift it for a couple days. Can you lift it? Where are you at with it?
No, that's exactly what it was, right? I'm all good, a little stiff, but I mean, it's at the time when you're impacting, everything on me was just locked up, right? And there was trouble breathing, I couldn't really move, my shoulder was in some pain, so you just think the worst, right? I'm like, man, is this thing out? Whatever. So I think as every minute goes by, you kind of calm down, you kind of think about what hurts, what doesn't, and then an hour, then a day, and so it was scary, in the moment. Like I said, I folded myself, and my left arm thumb was banged up, and then my shoulder and upper body, you're not really breathing like you want to and stuff, so it's more scary than anything. But yeah, I think now, like I said, I came back to the States. I saw Doc G the last 2 days, went and we did x-rays and everything's fine. Just one of those, if you get thrown off a building on your head, you're going to feel it for a few days. So yeah, I shouldn't take it away from training. I cycled yesterday, was able to do a little bit of gym work, some therapy, and yeah, it was more scary than anything for sure.
Before we hear from Hunter Lawrence, let's talk a little bit about the Lawrence versus Deegan situation right now. Hayden Deegan posted on Instagram that he was supposed to be going to AUS-X Open, but he's not anymore. Well, that was before the Australian Supercross finale for the Australian Supercross Championship last weekend at the AUS-X Open. The Lawrence brothers are now partners in that series, and they're helping promote that race. And by investing in that race, they're also financial partners as well. So they have to kind of sign off when they're deciding to pay riders to come down and do that race. Well, Hayden Deegan, he wanted money to show up at the last minute. However, the series had already promoted the Lawrence brothers coming back, Cooper Webb coming down and racing it, and they didn't really need another rider to pay to come down there. So because of that, they decided, hey, we're not going to pay you any extra money. However, you still can come down here and race. He was never banned. He was never excluded from the race. He just didn't get any extra compensation for being Hayden Deegan. So a little bit of a mix up there in the world, and now a lot of comments, a lot of harsh criticism has been sent towards the Lawrences. Now, the Lawrences haven't addressed this publicly, but they were both very vocal in their press conference interviews yesterday, mentioning how harsh criticism from the fans has really weighed on them. Jett Lawrence was especially open and honest in his video with us. You can check that out on our YouTube channel and on our website. Hunter Lawrence, his older brother, obviously talked about the challenges of him seeing that criticism weigh on Jett and the negative comments online. So let's hear from Hunter to see what he had to say about that now.
It sucks, honestly. I can't handle things how a normal average person would handle in real life because of the platform we're on and who I am and what kind of presence and stuff, and people look up to us as well, and anyone's waiting for any small hiccup to just prey on your downfall. So definitely we have to go about things differently, but yeah, no doubt I see it. I see everything that goes on, and all I can do is be there for him. So back to what Don was saying on, does that change anything? No, it honestly, the big brother role becomes stronger than the racer role in a lot of ways, just because of what I see and the importance of that. So yeah, there's definitely a lot of stuff we go through. That's why Australia was so good for us, to kind of get that refresh and be proven that it isn't the normal, what agenda people try to push and stuff like that, and what they try to push a narrative on what they want people to believe.
Hunter, is it that bad? When Jett left here, we were all kind of like, man, I didn't feel like they were getting that much hate from people. Is it that bad on social media or wherever? Because from our perspective, it's like most people love you guys.
Yeah, and that seems to be the normal. Every race this year, we never have negative interactions with fans. That just seems to be the normal for today's modern age. Is in-person confrontations don't seem to exist anymore. It's always on social media. When someone gets a phone in their hand, they feel 7 foot tall. And then when there is an in-person confrontation, there's everyone there to someone actually has the balls to stand up for themselves, and then people just want to take him to the slaughterhouse.
When you talk about the length of the season and needing some time off, I totally agree with you. But you also signed up to do Australian Supercross, and it sounds like a partnership for maybe a couple years. How does that fit in? And I understand completely that would be refreshing at the same time, but how does that work into and people would question you maybe oh, you're complaining about a long season or needing time off, but then you add a race. Can you explain just what adding that race means to you and how that might help you guys?
Yeah, absolutely. No, it's a great question. We often laugh about it ourselves. We're just dude, all we want to do is have a weekend off, and then we're excited to do these preseason races, but it's a different kind of aspect. There's no set outcome for the event. It's a great financial opportunity as well, guaranteed financial as well, which obviously helps. It has to be that, because if there wasn't, no one would do them. But at the same time, it's just we work around that. We're only in this career for 10, maybe 15 years to make set ourselves up for life, hopefully, and so yeah, you kind of work around it. There's bigger problems to have in life, and my father was a tradesman, so I'd much rather just be sick of racing than be out in the Australian sun doing rendering or stucco or a bricklayer or something like that. That's a really, really tough labour, and the real world's not easy. So
that's cool.
Speaking of tweaks, the 9 whoops, is each one of them?
Oh man, it's coming in hot here.
Coming in hot here,
yeah.
Boy, the 9.
Listen, the 9 whoops obviously is a large part of the conversation, both internally, obviously externally. Our goal is to produce a challenging and safe racetrack. Hands down, that's the most important thing to us. We are in the process of developing data to be able to tell us, I think sitting in this room, we probably all have our own opinions on what's good, what's bad on the racetrack, right? But data's king, and it's going to tell you the facts. So we spent a year with the 9 whoops. Obviously, it came with its challenges, but we will look to expand on that in the future as we continue to develop more and more. To say right now, sitting here, that we're going to have 10 at Anaheim 1, no. Are we going to have 14 5 years from now? I don't know, maybe. Our goal is to keep athletes safe, first and foremost, and we'll do whatever we need to on the track while still keeping them challenging.
So are you saying there's no data yet?
So
if the crashes were fewer because of
What kind of data?
So you have a single year, and it's hard to take the data from a single year with a single set of whoops. So really last year was spent around being 100% sure that we're getting the right information. Now next year we'll start to introduce additional whoops and see, okay, does the data change anymore now that we've done this? And you know, it's a 3 to 5 year process to really get a good base of any type of information that you can use. You know, and we'll just kind of continue to go from there. Obviously, the rider feedback, the team's feedback is important to us. You know, we understand that there's a desire to go to more, but also on the same token, like, we want to make sure that, while yes, additional whoops does create some challenges, are we doing it the right way? Over the years, we've played with the different types of whoops, so building them with loaders versus dozers. We're trying to now make them bigger and fatter on top, as opposed to, if you remember, 5-6 years ago, they were real peaky. Sometimes they almost look like they were built backwards. You know, so we've taken a lot of those incremental steps to get to the point that we're at. The 9 whoops has become noisy, but we did all those other things to get here. Even spacing, well, not even across the whoops, but even spacing from round to round. You know, we've been between 13 and 14 now for a while. So this isn't new that we're looking at these types of things. It's just, this was probably the one that got the most attention.
With talking about tracks and even track changes, I raced in 2018 Supercross, and I wish the whoops were 9 whoops back then for me. That would have been nice. But also tough blocks. Those were, you know, a couple of riders mentioned it today, maybe 1 or 2, that, you know, it's different when you go practice at a practice track without tough blocks, and then you get into a stadium. The track might be identical, but when you add those tough blocks, it really narrows the field, the track, and also can be treacherous. My life has been saved by tough blocks more than it's been hurt, but you know, like any rider, you find them and it can be difficult. So what are you guys looking at with tough blocks? Is there any kind of progression that we can do to make them a little bit safer, or, you know, stay in where they're supposed to be without catching riders' foot pegs? There's been talk about it, but is that something that you guys have data on, maybe, of how often riders are saved by them, but also taken out by them?
No, but to your point, it's not something right now that we have data on. It is something that we've discussed. Back to the whoops, it's like, okay, well, this person seems to think that you know, they cause more harm than good. This person thinks that they do more good than harm.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? With that data, it will be able to make much more educated decisions. We have had discussions on different, you know, different structures of the tough blocks. You know, we've looked into the European style, you know, the more arched. There's pros and cons to all of it, and it's just like one of them things that we haven't found this is going to fix a problem that exists. Yeah, you know,
the track definitely looks way cooler with tough blocks on it than it does without it.
And you have to be able to line the track somehow. Yeah, you know, to your point, I think it's something that we are continuously looking at, and would, you know, be open to any and all suggestions as we have been.
Cool.
Yeah, so SMX Next, we started, thank you guys, with Moto Combines. MX Sports team put that together as a developmental platform for you know, that gap between you know, racing Lorettas and racing pro motocross, and it was successful. We liked it. We began to move that direction with Futures, which has been very successful. Futures is 4 rounds plus a national championship, and then you know, MX Sports has, I think they had 2 rounds last year. Moving into this year, you know, trying to umbrella everything into a common name and a more consistent platform. We'll be rebranding everything as SMX Next. There will be a total of 10 rounds, so there will be 5 Supercross rounds, 3 pro motocross, moto combines, and then 2 events at the World Championship Finals. So those final 2 rounds will replace the 65s and the Super Minis, and we'll have the 250 guys race twice at those back-to-back weekends, and then the last race would be the KTM Juniors. the effort and the goal here is to further develop the pros before they become pros in the 250 class, and give them an opportunity to race under the lights with the fans before they get to the next level.
That's awesome. Will that be still the final round, be the championship deciding round, or will it be a series throughout the whole year?
So for this year at Futures, the final round will be a national championship, and then the last two rounds at the playoffs will be championships as well.
You're saying?
Nothing in Moto Combat.
Oh, okay. Yeah, that's a great program. I think that's awesome to invest in those guys and give them more opportunities to grow and build the base of our pro riders. That's cool.
Yeah. It's progressed so much, and the OEMs are heavily involved in supporting the program and telling us what they need, what their riders need. It was designed to be an opportunity not just for the riders that already signed with OEMs, but or factories or teams in general, but also if there's some up and coming talent that one of them wants to see, they give us suggestions and say, hey, bring over Cole Davies, right? That happened a couple of years ago, and you see the success that he's had. So it's really worked well in not only giving them the opportunity to race on the track, but also giving the OEMs and the other teams an opportunity to see talent that they might not have seen before or would have had to travel a long ways to.
That's cool.
Awesome.
Good?
Yep.
All right.
Yep.
So thank you guys for tuning in to This Week in MXA, episode 207. Of course, as I mentioned, lots more content coming from this. Check us out on Instagram at Motocross Action Mag, our website, motocrossactionmag.com, and check us out on your favorite podcast platform as we're uploading all kinds of interviews from the last couple days. Thank you guys for tuning in. See you in the next one.